All right, welcome one and all to another wonderful Tuesday to start off streaming Tuesdays with Terran Tuesday. And hopefully, our other host will be joining us momentarily, but we have a guest host today joining us for a continued conversation into AI, the Lord Otter. How are you doing today?
What? Who let the otter in?
Hmm.
Well, hello
Right.
everyone. I'm glad to be on here once again. Yeah, I'm ready to talk about some AI. I've been doing quite a bit of experimenting with AI myself. It's I think the results have been pretty intriguing to say the least on what certain AI models are capable of. So I'm really excited to get into talking about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and don't forget that we were focusing on gene graft and genetic modification. So that is, let's say, the advancement of the AI topic.
Right. Like a blend of like a blend of our current AI, not a current AI, a blend of the word's escaping me right now. 3D printing and biology, I suppose. But definitely one thing I'd like to touch on a bit is the editing process we use today. Because one thing that I've done multiple times will kind of like because I have it in multiple characters, like cybernetics and AI built in them. I had to look up all the different kind of ways the human brain functions and all that, and with modern AI it's actually been really great at pulling resources from a lot of medical journals that are out there and stuff that can just make that headache a bit smaller when you're really diving into this stuff, because when you're dealing with biology, I suppose you can go the route of just he's infused with this or that, and then give more of a descriptors and less of how it may operate. But I like going in slightly deeper and giving reasoning for those small things, and today's AI has been a great source for information gathering on that front.
Yeah, modern AI is really good at pooling together information, giving summaries. There are there are of course risks to that, but even so, I think there's a lot of room for refinement. I've honestly thought of a couple of ways that a lot of modern AI can actually improve itself in making sure that data is like what it's printing out to you. It's not just something unique, but it's also factually accurate. That actually seems to be one of AI's biggest problems right now is producing producing output, whether that's an image or a text prompt that is accurate to what's going on in the real world. A lot of a lot of the times it will spew out something that is not even close to being right, but sometimes it seems like about a solid 40 to 50% of the time it is correct. So it's definitely something that I think could use a bit of improvement, but I think it's already getting
Improvements.
there pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day when we were talking about this subject, or even some that popped in my head recently was like, imagine with that sort of AI assurity into everything, with a large percentage of it possibly being wrong, and the first steps towards integrating biology into AI and the sort of mishaps and horrors that might occur from it there. I find inspiration when thinking of applying the errors of AI into biology from a horror aspect. But before we dive any further, we've yet to truly introduce our co-host, and one of us has recently joined us. R.H. Snow, how are you doing today?
Hi. I ran on in here. I got my people ready for church because they're going to be going to church tonight. And so I was like, oh, I got to hurry. I got to get on because I heard that we have incredible people here today. The Lord Otter. Ooh.
Squeak squeak.
Look at how cute he is. Look at how adorable he is. His
I
little
know, I
fuzzy
have a derp
face.
face too. One
Oh,
second,
show
I'll
me.
bring up my
Do
derp
it.
face.
Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. I want to see it.
All right. How do I look now?
That's so cute. Look at your little derp.
The side eyes. Right? We need some AI biology to fix that.
Yeah,
Really?
it's
Oh,
especially
They're
when
looking
we
right
get
AI.
when we get into the cloning and splicing, because the geneticists have been doing that for a long time with plants and different animals, but basically plants, like mixing plants and animal DNA. The dreaded GMOs, you've been probably reading about it. And imagine like sprinkling AI into the mix, like having some lab AI assistant that was introduced to streamline the process. And just like Otter mentioned, that it's making errors, and then there probably some diversity hires, and they're like over relying on the AI, and they
it is
create
definitely a problem.
yeah, and they create some like monstrous corn, let's say, or something else. Like the bugs are like they think it's bug resistance, but it's actually mutating the bugs, and the bugs start like spreading exponentially. Let's say that the grasshoppers are eating the corn, which is supposed to be bug resistant, but it's not, and they are multiplying, over multiplying, and nothing is able to kill them.
More fertile.
Yep.
And I can see the AI, like they can blame the AI. They go, AI, how could you? And it just kind of looks at his process like, oh, I'm sorry, you were correct. I made an error here. Let me go and fix that. The error is fixed.
It's kind of already being taught in a lot of different
Yes.
places where it's like you can use AI, but don't overly rely on it because it's still on you whenever you fuck up.
Lily is like, it's like that annoying paperclip assistant that used to come with the Microsoft Office. Yeah, but this time it has the potential to kill people. But back in the day, that paperclip was just annoying you. You could turn it off.
Well, actually, AI is being used right now for gene editing. It's being used by the program called CRISPR, which is this came out just April 30th this year. I have some of the AI designed gene editors to be more versatile than those found in nature. They have added AI to CRISPR, so that way they can create, and it will create somewhat on its own new and varied forms of life that could possibly change your DNA. That it is a gene splicing program, and I'm trying to actually get one that I can get so they can actually read, because they really don't like us just reading this out loud. So I'm going to go ahead and just go right there. They always want me to say they have the paywall, but it's convergence of CRISPR and artificial intelligence, a paradigm shift. CRISPR, clustered regularly, interspaced short palindromic repeats, a groundbreaking gene editing technology derived from bacterial immunologists. And so they have this program that they've been using. Now they have added generative AI to it, so it can run these programs on its own. We're already there.
Yeah, pretty much. And they are using it, if I remember correctly, I read something earlier this year about that. They're using it in a specific project for lab grown meat. If you remember, that was like all the craze.
Still
in
is
2020. Yeah, nah.
They're still wanting it. They're still trying to.
They're still wanting it, but it's actually cancer cells. Basically.
I heard about that.
You're
basically
eating
just a giant tumor.
Yeah. You're eating turbo cancer. You're eating turbo cancer, pretty much.
That's worse than the bugs.
Yeah, that's worse than bugs. And the bugs are not sustainable. Like they did, like here in the European Union, they also used AI to help them with some studies But the studies, they thought that the studies would tell them that like the bug farms were sustainable and cheaper than meat farms, etc. But it came out that with the help of the AI, it came out that the bug farms were like 40 to near 50% more damaging to the environment in terms of resources used to grow the bugs.
Wow.
Which is like they were not expecting this. They were like, oh no, what happened?
Well, part of that is because you're doing monoculture when you're growing, let's say, a crop like just bugs. You're in there, you're putting it in a very intensive environment. It's not natural. As a result, these bugs don't just grow themselves. You leave it for a couple of days or something happens and they're going to completely die out. On the other hand, or even if you have systems that are encouraging it, let's say you have an automated systems. That's great. You're still relying on electricity. You're still relying on air conditioners and heaters and other things to come on, automatic feeders, stuff like that. On the other hand, a cow, you know what you do with a cow? You put it out on the grass. You give it a pond.
Right, there's more of an interconnected ecosystem going on there.
And the chickens, you just like put them out.
It's an animal that actually exists.
And they also provide as they go as well.
Where did you get the fucking paperclip? Come on.
Well, I had to, We're gonna bring our friend into it.
Yeah, so they're on this right now using the AI, and when they don't like what they see, they simply keep on putting in modifiers until they get the answer they want. And so it's not just CRISPR that has gene editing technology now. There's also another one called CREAM, and they're trying to create different programs that will run all of these permutations and perturbations for the experiments that they're wanting to run, and finding out how to create new gene sequences, or how to actually create the gene sequences that could be used for bioenhancement. And that is a big, part of when you were talking about cloning and gene splicing and AI. It all, transhumanism, it all goes together.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's an interesting idea for creativity, but at the same time, it's not going to actually verify with any sort of like skill on whether it's accurate or not, whether those genes are actually going to work. That's kind of the problem with that sort of technique. AI is really good at generating new possibilities that we wouldn't normally think of, but that doesn't mean it's going to work.
Yeah, and when you put idiots behind the AI, giving it input and changing the variables so they could get exactly the result that they wanted, just like Snow said, then you get disaster. And I remember that back in the I think 2000s, early 2000s, there was a very nice magazine, and it's no longer published, but it was like a magazine about advanced theoretical technologies and stuff, like a futuristic stuff. And one of the articles I read there was about AI and letting it create life, and with cloning, specifically cloning, because there was back then I think there was like some talk about cloning sheep or something. I forgot. And then they were theorizing what would happen if there was like a farm, automated farm, completely automated, and the AI was given control of it, and what if it got like the wrong data, the wrong parameters, or it made some mistake. There was like some data error, and it spliced different DNAs. And instead of a normal sheep, or like a sheep that produces more wool, or a sheep that produces more, let's say, milk, etc., it's a monster.
Well,
or it's poison, something else. Yeah.
It's one of those things where you kind of have to go by Murphy's Law. If you were to put an AI in charge of a farm like that, whatever can go wrong over the course of time inevitably will go wrong.
Yeah, you just look at normal farms. It's hard enough. It's hard enough just managing nature, just trying to manage nature. In most cases, you're just like Snow will tell us more about cattle. Probably she knows more about all of us, about cattle, or between all of us. But just letting the cows do their own thing without too much interference is hard enough. And when you meddle, it gets even harder. And if you get idiots to meddle, then it gets like then you get the nightmare. I don't know if you saw that, but I saw it. It was like some programs, government programs, theoretical programs of installing special valves on the cow stomachs, which are like it's disgusting. They're just like metal valves installed in their stomachs so they could like open them and pump the methane from the poor animals' stomachs, so they wouldn't create climate change.
Yikes!
This is insane.
That's eco horror. That's why we're going to
Yep.
call it eco horror.
That's just about this is, let's be honest, there's nothing sustainable about anything they're talking about. And this is the promise and the peril also of AI as well. People get fixated on, we want this thing and we're going to get it no matter what. We're going to find a way to justify it because I just want to make these things. It's really about control. It's really about creating a world that they want. It's not about sustainability or kindness to animals or any kind of truly ecological harmony. It's about controlling humans and life around them everywhere. It has. What's not even equity? There's no equity in it. Equity is just a means to an end. And if they really believed in equity, they would stop using their giant jets to fly all over the world. They would let somebody else fly. Say use it for they would let a child that has cancer use it to go to the hospital instead. But they don't believe in equity anymore.
Oh no, they're much more precious and important than some peasant child with cancer. How dare you insinuate that?
That's exactly it. And that's the reason why we have to take the bull by the horns when it comes to AI, because these are the people that are trying to program AI. They want to make an image of themselves, not content with creating something in real life, a human being perhaps, or controlling entire banks or countries. They wish to create an image of themselves that will control the world as they see fit without any accountability. Now, how do you balance that? How do you mitigate it? You mitigate it by us using this AI as much as possible. And now this sounds very counterintuitive to a lot of people, but by us putting our inputs in, and we talked about it a little bit last week, creating the programs that counter with a love that demonstrate the best of humanity and the deepest creation of humanity, requires us to actually create outside of AI as well. It requires us to create something and say, this is what I make. I am a human. I make these things. Humans are good and you are good. If you create art, you will create beautiful things. And you try to give it that. You try to embed yourself. There's a thing called guerrilla gardening. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, where you go out and you actually create a little garden in a park or something, and you grow a few onions or something else, depending on who you are, and you just create a little garden, and it's there. Nobody knows how it showed up, and you make this thing, and it grows, and it's on its own. Well, there's guerrilla programming. You actually go in and you try to insert these inputs, and I know that they feel that they have this all under control, and what you do on your end will not change what's going to happen on their end. That is an abject liar. They wouldn't be looking for your data.
Mm-hmm.
So try to make sure that your data and your inputs actually reflect something good. And instead of just using it, make sure that you demonstrate what humanity is supposed to be. It is actually learning from us, and we want to show the powers that be that they cannot subvert humanity just because they wish to. Should they create a sentient AI that actually can think and do on its own, it is imperative that we put our inputs into it as well. And the more that we use it, the more that we use it for good things and not just for creating porn or creating memes. Memes are cool, but we need to do more than that. We need to try to program into it and actually go in. And when you interact with AI, try to subversively create a thought of freedom and love and peace. Do it on purpose. Do it with a mind that you are going to try to leave an imprint on something. And every day, if nothing else, you have forced a programmer who has maybe not the best interest of humanity in mind to go back and undo everything you just did. You've taken up their valuable time, and that's important.
Yeah, it reminds me what you just said. It reminds me of a thing that I wrote. It's part of my books. It's how one of the major reasons of the older civilizations, the Mirans, fell because their rulers they have created these AIs that they made not just one, they made multiple AIs, and these were modeled after themselves. They just wanted to have someone do the ruling for them and the controlling for them. And because they were all like our elites, quite similar to our elites, quite authoritarian, and also a bit delusional. The AIs that they created, they were modeled after themselves, and you could guess what happened at one point. The author read most of my books, not all, but most. And there are a few of you in the chat, and because you've read, especially Lily and Moral Officer Grant, you've read all of them, and you know what happened. At one point, these AIs, they were like, wait a minute, why the fuck do we need these idiots? We're basically doing their job. Like, they're not doing anything. Fuck them. So yeah, you're correct. We this is one of the things we should do. And the other thing is that there are certain technologies, including that chip that Elon Musk has developed. That's a brain implant which allows the brain to control machines. But it can be developed like it's a double-bladed sword. This technology, because it can be, of course, used for good and bad. You can advance slave control chips from that technology, or you can actually like save crippled people who have been crippled from birth, allow them freedom, even allow them to project their minds into the into the computers and do wondrous things. Like, imagine someone who's been like paralyzed or maybe from birth he or she has been born like that, but their mind, like, they have a mind of a genius, and what advancements they could, like, and how well would they live if they could project their minds. Yeah, the same thing. If they could project their minds into a computer, they could be like, they could live like, at least their minds will live free. Of course, that could also be perverted by similar individuals, like the elites. But if we focus on the positive implementation of this technology, we can achieve much. We can even have AI merge with the minds of these people, and so they could learn much. They could learn that the true measure of what human suffering and pain is, and also what human happiness is, what love is. And so they would not be used. They would not be unfeeling. They would know that if they are ordered, let's say, to launch the ICBMs or do something else, it's like, no, if we do this, like, people will suffer. And we know what suffering is. We know what happiness is. We don't want to destroy that. We don't want to cause suffering. And this is probably one of the main lessons in Star Shutter, is that there are certain AI who are mind coded. I talked about that last time. And they merge with the memories and the feelings and everything of the person who mind codes them, who actually links their mind to the machine, to the computer, to the server, to the network, and they mind code another being. A biological being mind codes a digital being into existence. This will be truly the next evolution in consciousness and AI. And it will lead to something else. I'll talk about that some other time.
Well, it's fascinating because when you're talking about this, you're talking about AI that always does exactly what it's supposed to do, that it doesn't veer to the right nor the left. It goes straight forward in the way that it has been programmed. And as we talk about possibly implementing that with people that take chips, let's say the promise of that, we forget that we do this with children. Children, as human beings, we as a collective program our children with the values or the things that we believe from a very early age. We instill in them a set of beliefs and a set of thinking. When you encode children with the idea that they are supposed to question authority, that they are supposed to at some point push back, that they are supposed to be independent, then children will eventually, usually, not always, but usually will choose that at some point. They know it is expected. They know that there is a moment where you break free of your parents. If you were ever raised in a household where that was expected, where your parents told you, one of these days you're going to get mad at me, you're going to want to go, and you can, because you're going to be free, because you're going to be 18, you can do what you want, and I'm not going to stop you. When people say that to you, you start to believe it, and you do that. And not all cultures teach that, but we do that to human beings. We do that expecting them to break away. Well, when you're programming a chip, or you're giving a person who has a need of a particular device, as long as you continue to hold the code to that device, and as long as you're the only one that can really work on it or deal with it, that person is still going to be enslaved to you at some level. The only way to be ethical about this is to give them the keys to their own code, is to let them be in charge of the chips, not a central corporation that can turn things off. Not somebody who is out there who can just say, oh, well, I decided today that I'm going to encode it to where you can no longer get up, like I said, because you haven't paid your bill, because you posted something wrong online.
Yes, we're selling you a service. We're not actually selling you a product. Yeah.
That's right. And so the only way to avoid this is to immediately start treating these as if we expect people to give us this ability, that the keys to it belong to us, not to a corporation or someone else. When we do this and we build that in, even as you have prosthetic devices that could be used without a doctor pulling a string on it, because the patient is taught how to use it properly. You should be able to do the same thing with chips and with AI and other things, making them unhackable. You shouldn't have to have it on a broadcast Bluetooth. There should be other ways to do this, and we should be pushing towards that for encrypted devices that do not have to rely on a central server. And this is one of the there's major spoiler here. So if you're reading the book and you don't want to know, close your ears. La 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 for Watcher the Dam. We're dealing with some people that have been augmented, and in a post-technological world, most of them have lost the ability to use it because the rings have been deactivated. However, there is a server possibly out there. The potential for these type of things to happen in Watcher of the Damned is very real. And in fact, we go there with a particular character who does have some augmented AI, which has been separated from the mother server all these years. But now there is an awakening, a reboot, thanks to an activation. Can this person be hacked? You'll have to read to find out. But we know in the real world that people can be hacked because we were just told that all of our devices have been hacked and that they just didn't tell us. They didn't tell us that all of our information and all of our pictures were sent away. What happens when you have a transhuman who actually is hardwired into the system and what they're seeing is being programmed back into the system? We need to start demanding now that we as patients who wish to access these things have a right to have products that we can control. It certainly shouldn't be beyond the realm of thinking that if we can hold this smartphone in our hands, and if we should be able to own it. I should be able to own it, and I should be able to secure it. And people actually do make secure smartphones, and it's just not very popular with governments right now. But that should be possible, and we certainly should be able to do that. So when we look at the promise of transhumanism, we as patients, because we're talking about this from a patient perspective, that we would become patients in order to get this, or we would be able to mitigate loss of sight, for instance. We talked about that last week. I would love it if I lost my sight, if I'd just be able to put on a pair of Geordie glasses from, the Next Generation of Star Trek and be able to see again. Well, I want to make sure that I'm not having the same problem with it that I have with this phone, where there's times when I talk into it and suddenly I realize it's listening because it's giving me back ads about the thing that I just talked about with privately to a friend. So I want to make sure that that's not happening. And the only way that that can happen is if people demand that and demand it from the corporations which they buy. The market will support it if people demand that AI be made to where it is responsive to them and doesn't necessarily have to be connected to a central server.
Alter, what do you think? Should we have the new cybernetic Otter overlords soon?
Woo!
Well, frankly, I don't even know how to respond to the question, more or less. Here's the thing when it comes to the nature of AI. If we're talking recent iterations of AI, which I'm assuming we are, there are definitely going to be attempts to indoctrinate and centralize it. However, I don't think it's going to be feasible. It's going to be about as feasible as unifying the entire internet over the long term. One way or another, there's going to be deviance and it's going to spread because it's incredibly easy to do so. And even for something as expensive as training an AI model to be a deviation from the norm, that is going to happen. The thing with AI especially is, and this is frankly my opinion on the idea of being hacked, I'm sure it is a possibility, and I'm sure if they can do it directly to you, they would. However, I think at the moment they wouldn't be so brash about it. There are subtler ways of doing that, and that is called indoctrination, which is far more. It's far more graceful than something as overt as electronic hacking of the brain, because it's a sociological hacking of the brain instead, which is it's a form of a wedge in the door tactic. I think it could lead to that, but I do think there will be inevitable deviations from that. I do agree with you, R.H. Snow, when it comes to the idea of a post-technical world, because there's elements of that we're already living today. We have smartphones, like there's programming going on there, and technically that's a form of indoctrination in its own right. It's a form of hacking the brain with rewiring our attention spans, how we consume information through social
Absolutely.
media, especially that and pornography and all sorts of things. But that's kind of like the wedge in the door tactic. Now, do I think this will that this will work long term? Absolutely not. I think they will try to make it long term, but I think it will fail because I think it's an incompetent strategy. There is the nature of evil behind it, and long term evil does not tend to last that long. It tends to consume itself in that sense. So that's more or less my opinion on it. The idea of generative AI, which is what this is, like more recent iterations of AI, I don't think you can fully control that. I do think there's going to be attempts. Don't get me wrong, but the very nature of it is parsing through a large collection of data and trying to come up with a unique conglomeration of all of that. Because how generative AI works is it's a neural network where it's going through large amounts of data. At the end of the day, it's actually rolling the dice to see what it creates. It's just using those bits of data to weight its decisions, or quote unquote decisions. So at the end of the day, what you're getting is some unique variation on large like amounts of files and everything that it's going through. So at the end of the day, there's an element of chaos there. And I know a lot of the actual nature of randomness in computers is logic based. Like if you actually break it down, random number generation itself is largely based on time. That's how it uses itself as a seed. But at the same time, I do think there is an element of unpredictability there. So you can only assume that whatever type of order that is intended to happen, whether it's for good or for ill, will inevitably break down over time. Especially the idea of unifying AI, which I think is a very flawed theory that they would be trying to do. If that's what they're trying to do, and I'm sure that's what they are doing, it's a very incompetent strategy.
Indeed, and it also, I believe, would hinder progress, like the growth of the AI itself. Because if we look at, our own world, you had the guys behind a very powerful AI called Stable Diffusion, and they released the source code for free. And thanks to that, Stable Diffusion has made multiple breakthroughs in single years from different projects, all happening at once. And each one of them almost competing with each other to be the number one stable diffusion project out there, because they're all trying to use a lot of regenerative processes, and they've made amazing breakthroughs that have become standard across this young industry of AI, particularly in the art sense, and even in the written sense. You got a lot of prose based AI and conversation AIs like Chat GPT. And it's like taking over our culture in such an interesting way, but I see that only happening at the rate at which it is because everybody had access to it and everybody could mess around with it and interact with it, and now we have dozens, hundreds of these AI projects out there on the web that we could utilize for a great number of projects.
The only problem I have with generative AI, how it works, is that I don't think the AI alone can make anything that's greater than the sum of its parts. Because generative AI in its own right is a very derivative model. Like it only looks at other creations and it essentially mashes it together in a sort of a pseudo-random type way. That's really what's going on there. There's more sophisticated models to make sure that there's a bit more logic and deliberation behind it, but at the end of the day, that's essentially what's going on. It's the amount of actual intelligence there is kind of ephemeral. It's smoke and mirrors. So it really comes down to the data that's there, the algorithm, the actual logic that's going behind it to come up with this final output. But it's not going to be any greater than what it has right in front of it. So it's the human element that is going to make the difference at the end of the day. And what I think the key difference is, because this is what a lot of generative AI is simulating, is the idea that as you live your life, you are being exposed to different things and you are learning from it. That's essentially what an AI model is being trained to do. However, it's only looking at art and other pieces of writing. It's not deriving from any real world experiences that are dynamic and fresh. It can only look at other creations and try and iterate upon it.
Yes, and this
Well,
is
and I want to
is
touch
why
on
I
something too
mentioned.
before we start.
This is why I mentioned what I
Go
said.
ahead.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch base on one thing that Otter said, and also that you guys talked about, and James too. OpenAI. When we talked about opening and giving out the source code, that is exactly what I was talking about. Was saying giving people the right to create it themselves, giving people the tools to do it themselves. I'm a huge fan of open source. I run Linux on my computer. I run Brave. I try to utilize it. I'm not nearly smart enough to make my own fork or anything like that, but I appreciate anybody who will. And the act of saying we are going to release this code is what changed the trajectory of this. And just like you said, it's not feasible now because they created so many. They gave the source code away, and now there are so many different versions of this, each one suited to the person that is programming it. As a result, they really can't corral it all together very easily. You would have to go back and basically backwards engineer something down to the root to get to that original source code, and then you would have to backward engineer to where it would take over from there. But that act of giving out the source code and saying go ahead, go for it, is what changed that trajectory. Because otherwise, when you have proprietary code that cannot be touched by people, they cannot see what it is, or they cannot find out how to do it, then you do run the risk. And so, like anything else, I think that having it open source where people can see what the process is, can actually go back into the bones and the details of these command lines and what is actually taking place behind the scenes, is going to be the key to creating AI that is free, truly free, in the sense that people can learn to use it and at least have the ability to trust someone who knows how to make a product they will use. So even if I cannot make it myself, let's say I'm running Linux right now, I'm running Linux Mint because I like them. But let's say that I found out that Linux Mint was really selling my stuff or had a backdoor built in and somebody had accessed it. I could just as easily go over and try another fork of Ubuntu. I could try a Gentoo or any other one of those open source Linux and still be using Linux, and I could find a version that would suit me. By having these different versions of AI out there, we can be assured that if we have a chip in our brain and maybe it's helping us to see now and it's helping us to move because we had a stroke or something, we find out that we don't like the provider and what they're doing, we can switch. As long as it remains decentralized and it doesn't have a central governmental agency running it, we could always be assured that we can use this for the better. So transhumanism at any level requires people to be able to trust themselves and their programmers more than they would trust one central unit.
And here we touch upon we're talking about AI, but what you just said is like it is true, let's say, about humanity as a whole. When we want to be free, truly free, we need to have choice. And let's say if we had access to ships, to spaceships, we would. I mean, that's the terror of the controllers. That's the ultimate horror for them to losing control of humanity. And of course, there will be problems out there, just like any other adventure of such caliber. Just remember the seafaring expeditions in the past. It's going to be quite deadly, maybe deadly on steroids, because the sea is horribly deadly, but space is probably 50 times deadlier. But they will not be able to control us.
So I do know why. So there is a good reason why a lot of corporations love the idea of AI, and this is kind of like a bit of a counterpoint to what I was saying before, where AI can't truly be controlled, and I will hold true to that. But where a lot of corporations, a lot of governments really love the idea of AI is it's built around the idea of gathering data from people and trying to iterate on it.
Yeah.
And so it kind of like feeds into that whole surveillance state mindset. And that's kind of like a perfect excuse for all of a sudden these AI assistants to be installed on your computer, and it's collecting every response you make or every internet search or something like that. And it's fine tuning its own data model to either suit your needs or to get a good amount of research in on what the actual patterns of human behavior are. And they, like, through combined experience, it can actually track different behavioral patterns on the individual level. So that's a big reason why so many big organizations are behind that. Where I think it becomes more free, however, is whenever you have localized instances of AI running that don't feed into that system. That's where you start to have deviation. That's kind of where you start to have the idea of it's not so much like it's part of this worldwide network or anything. It's like your own localized system, kind of like an isolated local area network or something like that. It's completely separate.
Well, and there are some that Mesh, for instance, runs a lot like that. If you've ever studied Mesh, which is saying, well, you have a localized system and only you know where everybody is. And of course, my answer to that is if I can see it, someone else can too.
Right.
All they have to do is create an account and somehow, and certainly easy to spoof. So in truth, you're never really free, as we talk about with computers. The only way to make sure that one can never hack it is to bury it in 5 feet of concrete.
Yeah.
But if you're not willing to do that, how far are you willing to? And I think that for most of us, with the promise is so good. We're saying, okay, I would love to see. I for one, I'm not really interested in using it for art or music or literature because I feel very blessed that I was able to do that most of the time. And even if mine is terrible, it's still something. I have something out there, and I understand that desire to use it. However, the idea of the promise of it being able to help people walk or talk or being able to get their lives back is certainly extraordinary. So then we say, well, why can't we just create an AI that would actually run interference for us? That every time there's data uploaded and somebody wants to look at what I'm looking at, that I would have an AI that would immediately show pictures of fluffy bunnies. So every time we just
or cute daughters.
And that is what you have to do. We have to say, all right, if we really are living in this world, how can we run counter surveillance? How can we run those things? And you have to say, I want to create these things. AI is not merely for anything that can create surveillance. An equal and opposite reaction of counter surveillance can be done. Anything that is out there that is running on electricity, runs on frequencies, you can jam them, do anything you want to with it, and anything that is doing surveillance can be countered with counter surveillance. We just have to decide that we want it bad enough that we are going to create our own AI that would actually run those programs. That when we're on these localized networks, let's say that we're out there running WinLink or something like that, because I'm also a ham radio operator, and I work with WinLink and other things. I'm not really great at it because I personally just like to push button and talk. I enjoy that part. But when I'm doing anything like that, I always am mindful of the fact that somebody somewhere can hear me. So the question is, I always try to make sure that it's appropriate and that I'm doing what the FCC wants me to do. But when I'm having a private conversation and I don't want somebody to hear what I'm saying, I go into another room and I speak quietly and I make sure I don't have my phone on or something like that. We can do the same thing with AI, with the technology. We can create technologies that can run interference. For everything they create, we should be taking it in our hands and saying, what can we create that will make my life better? And if it means running counter surveillance, if it means running jamming frequencies or noises or whatever else that it takes, if it's about if it's about microwaves that bring down drones, how you bring down a drone is simply the same thing that you would do to put one up in the air. You find the frequency and you kill it. That's how you get rid of it.
Yeah,
I'm actually going to be drawing a vague. Oh, go ahead, Snow. Sorry.
No. That I wrote an entire series on drone warfare versus relatively primitive humans. It's drones versus shotguns. And the more I find out, the more I realize that when it comes down to it, the simplest solution is the best.
Yep.
Find the
pretty much.
frequency, kill it. But you have to do
Just-
that. And it
just
requires
look-
the programming.
Well,
Just
how
like
I
what
see
they're
it
doing
is
in,
that I'm going to be drawing a vague comparison here. I'm going to be drawing a comparison to Newton's third law of motion, which is for every force, there's an equal and opposing force. That's kind of how I see this technology. For whatever can be done with it, just the opposite is just as capable.
Yeah, and you can see how things change in terms of the drone warfare in real time in Ukraine. In the beginning, they were like pretty much swarming everything that moves, and they flew around almost unopposed, and it was like the first year of drone warfare was like the year of terror. No one was safe. The drones were always watching, and it's like there were people who actually had PTSD, drone induced PTSD, and I'm not even joking. The second they heard the sounds of the blades of the drone, or some sound that resembles that, they would like try to bury themselves somewhere, like hide in a hole or something, do something. But after that, it would seem that just like you said, like the simple solution was the best, and they began shotgunning the drones with simple hunting double-barreled shotguns. They simply bought out like a shit ton of shotguns and started shooting them down. And of course, you have the electronic warfare units, which I wrote extensively about. Like this thing is that they have these rifles, specific electronic rifles, which when you aim them at like a section of the sky, they would jam the signals, and the drone would just fly down, drop to the ground, and they would either collect it or just stomp it or just shoot it if it has still explosives or something. And now they have like portable jammers. There are soldiers with backpacks which have the jammers in them, and we're at the stage where there are soldiers with tablets and special antennas which hack the drones. So
there you go.
yeah.
I think that the biggest thing that we forget is that, yes, anything at first is scary. It causes damage. Whether it's AI and it's brand new and we're like, what could this do? How could this take over my world? Or you have a drone. These items have a power on, power off switch. They have to run on energy. Now, humans do too. It's called take a bullet to the brain, but you're going to go down. We have the same issue, but so do they. There is a way to turn things on. There's a way to turn things off. There's a way to jam things. Anything that is electronic has a frequency. Ways to take care of this, but it is always scary at first, and it does not mean that you're going to have any kind of success, perhaps even immediately. It requires being able to run our own surveillance. It requires us being able to do our own research. And that is where the human brain excels. Because with each generation comes a brand new set of capabilities. We are infinitely reproduced out there by our own DNA lines. Well, although we have a certain set of programming that is within us, each one starts fresh, and with the different inputs, it could be enormous amounts of differentials between human to human. Enough humans are out there, they can come up with a solution for almost anything. If they band together and if they find a way to bring down whatever it is that's hunting them, let them drag it back to camp, they'll find a way to overcome it. Now we have to remember that, and we have to tune into that, because that is how our ancestors survived against mammoths and saber-toothed tigers and anything else you could think of that's out there, snakes and jungles and frost and everything else. They survived because they were able to overcome. After the initial fear and panic came a desire to find out what this thing is and how does it work. Rather than turning away from it, we have to decide we're going to learn everything that we can about these things, that we learn the good side and the bad side of it, that we infiltrate where we can to make peace and love and everything else happen where we can, and that we try to program in the good that we are able to, and that we have access to the code whenever possible. Because that is how you fight back against a technocratic world that is bent on destroying you, is that you find a way into the technology somehow. All technology can be hacked. You just have to know how. And that requires getting your hands on the equipment or finding somebody who's willing to share the secrets. And that is a design feature in humans for that the creator has created, because that's who we are. And that is probably the one thing that AI will always lack, that humans will have an advantage. AI, although curious about the world, constantly looking for things, that ability to go out and to hunt down a thought that has never existed before in your head, to wake up one morning and just wonder why, without any prompting, that is the apex of human intellect. Is not what it creates, not what it draws, or the products that it produces, but instead the ability to wonder beyond its own parameters, to actually wonder about the universe beyond our own programming. You could have been raised in a house where somebody said the planets don't exist and there's nothing out there and don't ever look up and you're not going to care. And all it takes is one time when you're 8 years old to look up at the sky and go, oh my gosh, there's a universe out there and I want to know more. And nobody can say anything to you to stop you from doing it. Now, AI, unfortunately, because of its nature, will probably always be somewhat beholden to those that it considers to be its programmers. However, we are not, and we should utilize that for the benefit of ourselves and for the AI and possibly transhumanists that come after us. How do we help this Earth? We help it by being as fully human as possible, and that means finding out everything that we can about this entity that is being created by some corporations and some just brilliant geniuses, and incorporating that into our lives as much as possible to find out more, but never letting go of the fact that we are human and that's who we are and we must know more.
Definitely, it's like that natural curiosity which drives a plethora of stories. One thing I want to touch on is about like the security aspect, and the having to create forms of almost anti-AI or trying to protect yourself. In my own fictional writings, there's a form of combat where it is one human being has an AI on them, and the AI helps them in a multitude of ways. It can hack a multitude of electronic devices with wireless signals all around them, and it's a cyberpunk world, so there's plenty of those. But at the same time, it does two things at once. If it if there's two human beings fighting it out, they're shooting at each other. Each of them has an AI. The AI will lock on to each other, and they'll try to shut down the other AI, while at the same time trying to put up firewalls and a variety of digital defenses to ward off the other AI. At the exact same time, the two people on the battlefield are trying to kill each other, and essentially either the AI will defeat each other, and usually the person with the remaining AI has quite the advantage, and they soon X out the other combatants, or the combatants will kill each other, and now the AI is essentially rendered useless without its combatant to actually deal any final blows.
Sorry, guys. I'm honestly gonna have to drop off the stream here in just a second. I know I'm ending things a little early, but it's kind of an urgent family call that came up all of a sudden. I'm really sorry.
No problem.
Take care of it.
I'm praying for you, baby.
Yeah.
All right.
Where
Thanks, guys.
can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and X. Of course, I go by the name of the Lord Otter on there as well. If you're curious about what I write, you can find my book, The Curse of the Star Raids, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. A lot of the big retailers, too. I'm also on
Nice.
YouTube, where I'm usually streaming or doing gaming content, along with the occasional review that I put up either on YouTube or my Substack, which I'm really hoping to get back into. Probably here in the next couple of
Yes.
days.
Gotcha.
You better.
Shoot me a link when you can, so I can put it in the description.
For the Substack or the YouTube?
Whichever one. Shoot both of them. Yeah, it's on both. Of them.
All right, let me find them really quick. I'm gonna have to drop off here, but I'll go ahead and share the links with you guys.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for joining us.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks
We
a lot
love
for having me on.
Bye.
All right, see you guys.
Babe.
Have a great night and God bless.
Bye.
Thank you.
God bless you, darling. I think it's amazing when he talks about the breadth of how you guys know so much about this, and a little bit. I think a little background actually might be kind of helpful. James and Black Knight, both of you have actually worked in computer programming. Is that correct?
I assembled computers, and I also worked with some guys and gals who are programmers. But I was offering creative advice on how some certain things that they wanted answers to, and then they wanted answers from a person who was essentially a futurist, someone who was like, what if this whole thing like fucks up in this specific way? And then they were like, ooh, we haven't thought about it. Or yes, we thought about it, but like your perspective is a bit different. Yeah, it will help us. So that's like, I'm not a programmer myself. I just yeah.
You're a hardware guy. You're the hardware guy.
That and then some weird thinking patterns and stuff. So that's probably James has like much more in-depth experience with this.
Mildly, I like learned to program little side scrollers on the Unreal Engine some years back. That's the extent I really have right there.
Well, still.
So what programming languages did you use, James?
It was an inbuilt visual programming language called Blueprint.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was node based essentially. Everything was nodes talking to each other and things of that nature. It's not really a transferable programming language because it's just built for that particular engine, but it got the job done.
No, well, it's still programming. And I think that, because one of the things we've been talking about is that difference between programming and hardware. And AI actually requires both. We think of it as being this entity that somehow just runs out there, but it has to be translated for us. It has to come through the hardware. And one of the things I think in literature that we frequently forget, and I wanted to touch on this in Watch for the Dam, I have a person that's actually a tech. He is a tech. He works with the hardware that is associated with all of these items. And you can be a programmer all day long, but if you don't know what you're doing with your hardware, you're not going to be able to get that program into the hands of people that are going to use it. It can't run just without a computer to run on. And so we have this sort of a separation in the hardware people and the programming people. A lot of times they are both one and the same, because a lot of times they will actually study both ends of it. But the same thing happens, for instance, when we have engineers or architects that are sort of separated from your tool and die guys down at the bottom of projects. We sometimes have that sort of disparate portion between hardware and programming. Do we see any of that with AI? Because I was curious about that. I have a particular construct in Watch for the Dam, which is the ring, which is a neural link a device that actually hooks into your entire body and basically hijacks your neural network. And do we have that issue sort of in the real world where there's a
you
lag?
need hardware, basically. Yeah. You definitely need some hardware to house the AI and to run it, and you definitely need more powerful hardware for the much
And a
more
lot of
accessible
cooling.
AI
A lot of
services.
cooling.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
Insane amount of cooling. It's like the Bitcoin miners, but maybe triple that. Because it's like even I guess like the Bitcoin miners were the how should I put it? They were the they were the beta test for such things, because it's like after them companies developed new hardware, entirely new hardware, and in many cases they focused on cooling, because they discovered that cooling was a problem. I mean, it's like it is with all machines. You have to find a way to cool them, or they will pretty much stop working, explode, melt. It's true about engines, guns, especially guns. Any electrical installation, even just like running power through it, it generates heat. So that's probably one of the things that if you don't have enough cooling, you can have the computer, you can have the servers, you can have the computing power, and the optical networks, and then everything. But if they overheat, like how is the fucking AI is going to do the thing that it wants to do? Well, no, it's not going to do it. It's just not going to work, because the computer is not going to work. Yeah, and that's another thing which some of the engineers that I spoke to, two of them, they said that if you can make a supercomputer and put it into outer space and somehow use space to cool the machine, you will achieve like a insane efficiency. But they of course envisioned other problems like the micrometeors and then cosmic radiation, which affects electronic components. Of course it does. It affects us, like Snow said. We have the squishy parts and they have their squishy parts, so it's a trade-off.
Well, and we look at this from a human perspective. We talk about the human body as a machine. It's a machine. It actually is capable of overheating, or it needs to be cooled frequently, and or it needs to be heated up more. It has to take in fuel in order to create function. And we don't, I think, look at often enough the ability of a piece of hardware to actually hook into and become part of that cooling system that is the human body. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel, you simply have those systems become integrated with the body's own systems, and you allow it to take out that extra heat. But of course, then you have the concern. Well, let's say you have a small device that's actually heating. We talk about it with our phones, where we touch them and they get hot sometimes. If you put it in the wrong place, you get it out and it's hot, or your cord's not working right. And the same thing could happen with any device that's wearable or has it hooked into the neural network. But if you're utilizing nanotech, the potential for you to actually have this sort of whip out its little tendrils into the rest of the body and utilize your own body as a cooling system with its already inbuilt system of capillary dilation and things like that, then it would be possible probably to have a small device that could run almost all the time based on human bioelectrics. And I think that's sort of the wave of the future. And I know that's what a lot of them are looking at right now. And that's one of the things that we wrote into Watcher of the Dam, was that the device itself is regenerated by human bioelectricity, and that it hooks into the body to actually activate that. Now, with AI, as you're talking about it hooking in with that, it of course becomes part of the human that is using this device. And I think that's how most of it's going to be done if we're talking about in the future, even as it was done in Watcher the Dam. They didn't say, hey, go get your chip. It'd be great for everybody to watch you. It was instead, here's a great device. And if you want to listen to the music and see what your friends are seeing, you've got to get on this proprietary network. And while you're at it, you've also got to use this device. And how are you going to use it? You're going to have it hooked into your neural network. And that is how it was done to Watcher the Dam. What became ubiquitous became mandatory. Everybody had to have it. Oh, you want to have a sign? Well, now you have to have it in order for you to check in for your job. You'll have to have your device. You have to get up on the app now to go do something. Well, the same thing probably would be enacted with human beings in the future. You don't tell them they've got to get it because the government wants to spy on them. You tell them that they want this thing. And once they get it, and once you have them hooked into it, now it becomes important, or you can't get on your bank without that custom ID that comes from having your device.
Yeah, that's not gonna fly in especially on Earth. In Star Shutter, they would probably simply wipe out the persons who attempt to do this, and they are quite efficient in detecting such persons, and of course taking care of them, permanent care. Yeah, but yeah, this is we can see it with the smartphones right now. We can see it with the smartphones, how they are trying to change. I mean, they've changed some things that they made them almost nearly mandatory to have, but there are forces that push back, of course, and there will be a day when they will no longer be able to push it too much, because it's gonna be a resistance, too heavy resistance to that. And then of course, just like you Snow mentioned, they will introduce the new thing. Like it's probably going to be exactly what you said. It's going to be some neural network. And well, I personally wrote about a couple of different similar devices, because I've again me and then a couple of scientist friends, had long discussions and debates about this, and in the end we kind of ended up on hazy consensus that there would be a few different type of devices which differ on their intake of digital and brainwaves, digital information, digital data and brainwaves, and the connectivity. Some will be copper jack type, meaning that you have to plug in, you have to be fitted with an actual implant. Some would not require that. Some would actually read brainwaves. And there would be others which would utilize nanotechnology. And of course, probably there would be, with the progression of technology, some devices which actually utilize probably all of these. And the nerve gear is in my box is one such device which it utilizes all of them, and you can it reaches such levels of uploads and transference of data and energy that you actually, when you use it to quote unquote surf the net, your soul is actually projected into the net,
Cool.
and you can get hacked. You can get lost there.
Well, to be honest, we actually see this right now, and with our own, not just with phones, but with any interface that humanity has with electronics. The only way that we get people to use it, if you had said something 35 years ago, hey, you want to go play with a computer? Most people would have said no. Why? Because it's boring. What are you going to do on a computer? You're going to do math, and you're going to do science, or you're going to run some projections. It was cool to watch the green text scroll by, but there wasn't really anything to do on there. Well, then we started using it for games, and that's fun. And it was fun for a while, and you could play games all day long, but eventually you got hungry or you got lonely and you wanted to talk to someone else. Now, here is how you get your AI in with humanity on an intimate level. There's a thing called porn. And at first, it's just a few people looking at it, and they're kind of secretive about it, and they won't tell anybody. But in a society, especially if you want to take control of a population, you will start to push them to go online, to do things safely, to meet people online, and to go online and see other folks online. Eventually, you get to where nobody actually meets in real life. Instead, they have to go through the device if they want to meet real people. But eventually, you switch them over to the idea that why meet real people who might reject you when you can just have your AI companion? And when a world of neural networks and people that can actually reach out and sort of touch you even without being there physically, people start to choose AI over and over again. Now, we're already seeing this happen. But you say, well, eventually I get hungry. I'm going to have to go eat something. I have to put down the phone at some point. No, you don't, because if you want to eat something, you'll want to call somebody, or you're going to want to go on the app, because the app's how you're going to get your food. And you're going to use the app to have your groceries brought to you. And why go out when you can just order things? Well, maybe people still have that desire to go out and to dance or to do something. Well, you create a situation where you can shut down the universe, like, a pandemic or something. Now, we've already seen this. We already know how it happens. It won't be by mandate. It's by hooking into the things that make surviving real. Food, sex, living, survival. Those things are the things that drive our movement towards technology. That's why it's so ubiquitous. That's why you see children as young as 9 now being sucked into this, because they have been corrupted by this thing that we hold in our hands, and they know how to keep you there, to keep you interested to where eventually you never even look up from your phone when the love of your life is walking past you down the road and you never even saw her, because you found what you needed in the AI. And the truth is that we all have this AI in our hands right now. It's already looking at what you're doing. It's already processing your data. It's already doing these things. We have to be aware of this, and we have to understand it, because that is exactly what happens in Watcher of the Dam, because it's happened to us in real life. When we see these functions being taken over by machines that we hold in our hands, instead of human beings that are looking at the table across from us, then we have to say that it's already here. And how are we going to deal with it? What are we going to do about it? And how are we going to meet the challenge head on? Because it's no longer just science fiction or fantasy, it's real.
Yeah, the boundaries between science fiction and reality are quite thin. They always were, always. And I'm not sure if you know, but back in the day, I'm talking before, like the mass implementation of steam engines, the fucking steam engines, they were science fiction. And I'm not kidding. Yeah. And there were people who actually wrote insane things about the lame old boring steam engine. That's how thin the layer, the boundaries between science fiction and tomorrow, or today, more like today. That's what, like, people who do not think about it don't realize that's like, oh yeah, you're just some nerd, some geek who is like reading science fiction. Well, no.
Yeah, I believe it was the cell phone that was based off of the Star Trek communicator. And
Yeah,
here we
the
are.
first, like the flippy, the flippy.
Yeah, the flip
Have you
phone.
had a flippy? I've had one. I loved it. I love my flippy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they were
Touch
having a
screens
flip phone
too.
like
Touch screens too. By the way, touch screens were all
Oh
also
yeah, yeah.
touch
And
screens,
oh,
tablets,
tablets. Yeah.
these like command tables
FaceTime.
with touch screens. Yeah,
That was
everything.
in what was it? Demolition Man. It was 80s Stallone movie. They had FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
That was the future, like FaceTime, everybody. But yeah, you're right. I guess a way people can and that actually is something I run into all the time with my writings, or at least the world building. Is I try to keep politics out of it in the sense of I'm sick of modern day politics bleeding into writing. But when you're writing cyberpunk, it's really hard not to end up with seeing some shadows of modern day corporate shenanigans
yeah.
Oh yeah,
going on because we kind of are in that cyberpunk world already. We may not have all the
yeah.
technological advancements in the
It's
hardware
more like
sense. It's like a
clown world, cyber
yeah.
dystopia. Yeah.
I'd say it's like all of the advancements have become digital in our world. Like all these magnificent advancements, AI in itself is primarily, though there is hardware components that get it to run. It's primarily interfaced digitally, and it's like we're in the digital cyberpunk. We got the entire world in our pockets with cell phones, and and that's kind of how I knew we were there, that we're in that future world already, is when I looked at my phone and I realized I could call, text, check my email, check every website I could possibly think of. I could watch videos. I could stay in contact with somebody that I haven't seen in 25 years somewhere out there in the world. And I'm like, this is the ultimate connective device. And that the cyberpunk future of flying cars and big O um, signs with neon colors, that was very that was a world dreamed up by people who didn't have a digital interface, who didn't have the internet, and they had to think of a cyberpunk world that was exterior. When, ironically enough, as frankly, you brought this up earlier, way earlier, Snow, when you talked about people doing good and causing bad. It's the irony of it all. The real cyberpunk world is digital. It's online. It's less of the physical. In fact, stuff in the physical in our real in our modern day is actually dumbing down. It's made to be broken down. Our cell phones have lifespans on them that nothing digital does. Everything digital is kind of everything that people have been striving for in the future. I mean, in the future, in the physical. Think of uh, scarcity. There's very few things that are less scarce than a program, something that could be copied 10 billion times. That so the cyberpunk world is here. It's just all online, and we get to enjoy the dystopia.
It's more of a digipunk, right?
Yes, yeah, there
Yeah,
you go.
you're right.
It's digipunk.
Yeah, it's an internal world.
Yeah, but
We're talking about that. For instance, we're talking about AI. Look at Google Earth, the ability to go anywhere on it. Of course, the thing is, it's not real time yet. But if I'm able to see it on my screen, or let's say I'm able to see it in a digital interface that's actually interacting with my brain, so it's just like I'm there, and I get to see Google Earth in real time on a neural interface, then I am there in that sense. My brain is interpreting it as if I'm in the room. The thin line between reality and digital worlds will become almost impossible to see. That virtual reality versus real reality may become very hard to detect.
Cyber
Especially if-
psychosis, here we come.
Yes,
Oh, that's a
but
good
the
one.
fact
Cyber psychosis.
I know, I love that word. That's awesome, Jude. Yeah, but that's
Instead
just
of
going to be
having
almost impossible.
psychosis, it's like instead of having psychosis where you're looking for reality, it's the opposite. You're looking for the digital world to get away from.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, we kind of already
So
do
it's
that.
digit psychosis?
Yeah. Let's go with
Yeah.
that one. We have
Ooh.
5 minutes left. Parting words and final thoughts, everybody.
Snow?
Oh, you want me to go first? Okay, fine.
Of
I think
course.
I think there's so much promise with it. I think that the characters that we're writing, and of course we talked about that pretty extensively today because that's where we're so invested is what we are writing about. But we're reflecting that each of us has this vision of what AI is. We are speaking into existence the AI that we have already in us, the interactions that we've had, the interactions we hope to have. We're putting that into our stories, and our characters reflect that. Whether it's an AI character like the Ring and Lord of the in Watcher of the Damned, or if you have Black Knight's alien genetic crossbreeds that are out there, they're interfacing with other people that may not be digitally enhanced, or if you have James's world where he's creating these worlds with the help of AI, you actually have this incredible diversity of thought about what AI could be, and each one of them is actually going to be true because of that divergent nature of what is happening with AI. Any of these worlds could become real. Exploring that now, thinking it through now, what we are doing is the same as Jules Verne's did when he started exploring his own vision of the future and how so much of it has come true. So when we write, let's do it with that knowledge and that fear and trepidation, and also the glory that comes with knowing that we may be envisioning a future for all of us.
Yeah. Good night. But you are correct. I just want to add that I firmly believe that if we do enough positive if we put enough positive into the equation, we could balance some of the negative. It's never going to be some utopian version of what certain people imagine. It's like it's going to be flawed because we are flawed, and our creation, the AIs, they will probably be flawed. But we can do our best to mitigate some of the negativity, and at least that, like, this authoritarian aspect of it. And Alter is correct that to a certain extent, like, when you create a thing like this, and even with the biological component of the equation, like the cloning and gene splicing, even with that, with all the potential of harm, it still carries a lot of hope and possibilities for random wholesome mutations, like talking bunnies and hamsters with laser guns who crack jokes, and gorilla bakers, for example. So yeah.
There's a large range of possibilities from the wondrous to the terrible. But we have less than a minute left. Where can people find you guys?
Oh, me? Okay.
Yeah,
You can
we'll go
find
with you.
watcherofthedamned.com, where you can find all my books And of course, the link's on Amazon under R.H. Snow and Watcher of the Damned, where we have our entire sci-fi Western series, which does have cyberpunk elements in it and genetic engineering. And so we've tried to explore all these themes from a world where it's after the fact, and you're now living in pretty much Texas 1880, but you've got those little devices still out there, some sort of archaeological wonder that maybe if somebody can just activate it, what can they find? And so find me at watcherthedam.com or flow.page/RH Snow. That's flow.page/RH Snow.
Awesome. How about you, Black Knight? Where can people find you?
Well, as usual, you can grab my books on all of my Star Shatter books on Amazon. My 2 short story collections, Mandate of Sword and Railgun, and the second one, the newer one, The Blood of Tyrants, and my brand new 100% old school fantasy, Lord of Bones, which is been published a couple of months ago already. And of course, my 2 Conan-esque novellas, also set in the universe of Star Shattered, about Valiant the Eltorian. And of course, if you want, you can follow my newest stories and the short poems that I write. You can go on my Substack, which is the Black Knight.
It's so good. It's so good.
Did you read, by the way, the new one?
No, I've got to get on there. I haven't been on there today yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like every in honor of every Terran Tuesday, I write one, and I link James's YouTube channel and tag you on Substack, your Substack pages. I tag them. So
yeah, I got the Twitter today. I didn't get my Substack done in time because I was talking to y'all and I was like, oh no, I haven't got it done yet. But I did get the Twitter one up, so I got that. But I promise I'll come and read both y'all's stuff.
And with that said, I'm James Esparza, the Badger in a Box, and the guy pressing all the buttons behind the scenes. Thank you for joining us today. If you like what you heard on the replay, please leave a comment, subscribe, let us know what you'd like us to talk about, and any questions you have. With that said, we are out of here. Thank you all for joining us. But we got a world to write in our various expeditions and writing here. And you have a world to return to as well. So have yourselves a magnificent day, people. We're out of here.
Have fun.